The crazy space travel. A long time ago in the year 1965, a mysterious object fell from space in Nevada, USA. People all over the world were confused about what it really was, until one day, 42 years later, scientists had used their own special technology to design their own spacecraft and to go into outer space to try and find any life out there in our universe. Everyone was so excited to see if there was any life out in space, but there was only one problem: trying to find a crew brave enough to do it. This is the part of my story which brings me to a character named Han Solo. One warm summer in June, Han Solo was walking down the road past Area 51. He hadn't noticed a spaceship because he was reading a porno. All of a sudden, he had tripped over a cat. Once he had stood up, he noticed a sign reading, "Help Wanted." Han Solo had always wanted to be a spaceman, so ran quickly to the signing desk. Whilst he was writing down his details to become an astronaut, a man came up behind him and grabbed Han Solo's ass. Han Solo giggled at first, but then jumped away and shouted, "What the fuck? Who the fuck are you?" The strange man replied, "I'm Sergeant Anakin. I'm going to be helping you out on your mission. I want you to go and get a good night's rest. You are leaving tomorrow." Han Solo backed away from the gay sergeant and ran to his cabin. Later that day, Han Solo went to the gym to meet the other crew members. He went over to the bench and started reading his porno again until some weirdo guy came up to him and started talking about sandwiches. After the guy shut the fuck up, Han Solo replied, "Fuck you." The man replied, "What? Anyway, I'm your co-pilot. We're going to Uranus and search for aliens." Han Solo jumped up and started shouting at the weirdo, "You're not going anywhere near my ass, bitch! And everyone knows that all an alien is some fat Star Trek fan who has no friends and lives in a cave." The weirdo guy calmly said, "Fuck you! What the fuck would you know? Anyway, I'm off to bed. I suggest you do the same thing." So Han Solo went off to his cabin, but instead of sleeping, he watched CBeebies. The next day, Han Solo went into the cafeteria and ate some sugar puffs. While eating his breakfast, Sergeant Anakin came and told him to get changed into his spacesuit and then to go to the launching site. Han Solo finished his breakfast and so went to get changed and then went to where the rocket was. He met Sergeant Anakin and that weirdo guy outside. Sergeant Anakin told them to both climb the gigantic ladder up to the opening of the rocket. The weirdo guy climbed up first. Following behind was Han Solo and then Sergeant Anakin. Han Solo knew that Sergeant Anakin was only behind him so he could look at his ass. Once they had all gotten in the spaceship, they lay down to prepare for takeoff. They were told to count down from 18.5. At the count of 0, the rocket began to rumble. Then 2 minutes later, it was 60,000 miles from Earth. All of the crew got up and started playing banjos and guitars and singing campfire songs. Han Solo was freaked out and so he went to the kitchen and ate some Wotsits. Then all of a sudden, they all started floating about. That weirdo guy thought it would be funny to have a shit on a rocket at that precise moment. This led to a big jobby floating about the rocket. About 30 minutes later, the rocket began to get slower and began to fall in altitude. They had made it to Uranus safely. Once they had reached the surface of Uranus, they were so excited to go look for aliens. Anakin got a special alien catching net, and that weirdo guy got his little alien radar. Han Solo walked over to the door. He was going to be the first man in Uranus. He opened the door, and to his amazement, everything was green. Not like apple green, but ass-coloured green. Han Solo thanked his ass that his spacesuit was stopping the smell. Once he had gotten down, he couldn't stop bouncing about. It was so much fun. Once everyone was down from the rocket, they started hunting for aliens. They had been searching for aliens for almost 2 hours now, and their oxygen was almost low. But then Han Solo spotted something running away. He pulled out his gun and shot the running thing in its head. They all walked over and saw some fat green creature. It had everything that a human has, except it has an ass for its face. Now they knew that there was life on this planet. They walked up into a cave and saw a bunch of aliens playing chess and drawing pictures. They were like the alien versions of cavemen. Han Solo walked over and got out his grenade to kill the aliens. Sergeant Anakin ran over and grabbed the grenades before Han Solo could pull the pin. He whispered, "Are you fucking wanker? We're supposed to be learning all we can about these aliens, not to kill them, you dumbass." Han Solo stepped aside. Sergeant Anakin walked over to where the aliens were and greeted them. The aliens were so startled that they all started jumping on Anakin and farting on him. But this was no ordinary fart. This was acid fart. One fart can burn you alive. Han Solo and the weirdo guy ran away. They were halfway back to the ship when the weirdo guy collapsed. Han Solo ran back to see what had happened. He checked the weirdo guy's oxygen. It had all been used up. Han Solo didn't want to use his own oxygen on a freak like that, and so just ran away. Han Solo could see the rocket. It was about 1 mile away, so he ran and jumped like hell. He heard a kind of shaking noise behind him. He looked behind himself and saw about 60 aliens chasing him. Han Solo started jumping and running even faster, crying to himself words like, "I'm not going to survive!" and "Why me? I didn't do shit to anyone!" Once Han Solo got into the ladder of the rocket, he had to climb up it. All of a sudden, he felt a horrific pain on his leg. He looked down and saw his leg was burning away. The alien had burned his entire leg off with its acid fart. He climbed up to the rocket and quickly got into it. He hopped to the control desk and programmed the rocket to take off in 5 minutes. He hopped over to the beds and lay down. He started singing gay songs like "Reach for the Stars" by S Club 7. The rocket began to rumble and then suddenly took off, blasting into the air at 1,000,000 miles per minute. Han Solo passed out for all the pain and pressure of the rocket taking off. Finally, once Han Solo had woken up, he hopped to the medical room and wrapped a load of bandages around his burnt-off leg. 2 hours later, he arrived in New Zealand. Han Solo got out of the rocket and thanked his ass that he was on Earth again. He hopped along a path in search of a village. All of a sudden, a panda came down and bit Han Solo's head off. The panda then began to scoop out his insides. The next day, some tribal people found Han Solo's body. They took it back to the village and used it as a sofa. Blah 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 blah.